Welcome to Edison's new series, Real Assets in an Uncertain World. We live in an era of increasing geopolitical instability, higher inflation, and tightening monetary policy. Can investing in real assets provide sustainable, less correlated returns? Industry leaders from sectors such as renewables, infrastructure, media, and technology are joining us to reveal their views and deliver actionable insights for a global audience. In this session, I'm delighted to welcome James Smith, Fund Manager at Premier Miton Global Renewables Trust. I'm going to call it PMGR from now on, a fund that invests primarily within renewable energy. Welcome, James.
Hi, good morning.
Just give me a quick history of PMGR.
So I joined Premier, or it was just Premier then, pre the merger with Miton, in 2012, and at that point it was called the Premier Energy and Water Trust, and it was mainly investing in utilities and energy, although had a mandate which actually was a broader infrastructure mandate, and we were investing mainly in those areas, but also in other infrastructure areas such as toll roads and airports. So in what year was it? In 2017, we then changed the name to Premier Global Infrastructure Trust to reflect that reality that actually it was a generalist infrastructure vehicle. Over the last few years, we have invested more and more into renewable energy, such that it really became by far and away the dominant thing that we did. And we actually asked the shareholders if they would be prepared to change the mandate from infrastructure to dedicated renewable energy, and that was in 2020. And at that point, we changed the name again to the Premier Miton Global Renewables Trust. So I think where we are now, it's all fairly clear. It's a renewables investor. Although renewables always been a big part of what we do, that's now dedicated since November 2020.
So you're highly focused on renewables, but how do you go about building your portfolio?
Well, there's a whole range of things we're looking for. We're looking for outcomes, really. So we're looking for a good level of income, together with real capital growth over time. So how you then build that up is you then look at what kind of stocks deliver those outcomes, and we want a whole range. So some of the things we invest in, like say the UK renewable sector, for instance, is more income focused. And then other things we invest in, maybe a global renewable energy development company building solar assets all over the world, would have more of a growth focus. And then we also look for things like inflation protection. So we're looking at underlying regulatory regimes or sales contracts. So what do they look like? Are they fixed in nominal terms for 20 years, as they would be in the States, for instance? Or do you have more inflation protection like you would in Europe? There's a whole range of things, but yeah, we're looking for those outcomes of growth, income, some exposure to commodity prices when it's appropriate to do so, inflation protection, etc.
There's never been more interest or indeed necessity for renewables. But what sets PMGR apart from other renewables funds?
So I think in terms of what we do, which is investing in a global portfolio of listed renewable energy and other sustainable supporting infrastructure stocks, I think that's relatively unique. There are a few other investment trusts that invest in clean energy, but because of our background, we certainly have an infrastructure focus. There are a number of other renewable energy investment companies in the UK, but they tend to invest in assets rather than listed equities. So that's the big distinction. And investing in those global listed equities, it allows us to be far more diverse. So the other UK renewable funds, for instance, might specialize in wind and only in the UK. So that's, that might be a great thing to do, but it is a rather narrow focus. I think that's the main thing.
So you're broadly based, and where are you currently finding the most attractive investment opportunities?
Well, we are actually at the moment largely in the UK, funnily enough, although we're global. I think the UK is our biggest exposure at the moment. And the UK renewable sector has a number of attractions. So it has quite a large degree of inflation linkage, which we like. And it also has quite a large degree of exposure to power prices. And at the moment, because energy prices, as you know, are going up, having that exposure to power prices is proving to be quite profitable. Now, other times it may be that you don't want that exposure. You'd much rather be in very safe, fixed, long-term contracts. Yeah, at the moment, I think Europe and certainly the UK look like good places to be.
I was going to ask you about the current spike in oil and gas prices. I mean, presumably, from all we hear, the situation in Ukraine is going to go on for some time. How is all of that playing out in your business?
Yeah, it's, I mean, Ukraine certainly is a very large contributing factor, but energy prices were going up from all through the second half of last year as well. So it certainly hasn't helped. But yeah, there are underlying themes at play here. So as we've come out of COVID lockdowns, demand has gone up, but at the same time, capital expenditure into energy projects has gone down over the past few years. So the good thing about renewable energy is that you receive this commodity price, the power price, which is set by the gas price. So if gas prices are high, and I think they'll stay high for quite some time, that feeds its way through into the electricity price. And that's a benefit to renewable energy producers that have exposure to those markets. And unlike gas-fired generation, your cost base doesn't increase. The cost base of renewable energy plants is largely fixed, and it's set up front. You know, it's the capital cost and it's financing cost, and both of those are largely fixed items.
And the fascinating thing now is that the kind of rocket boosters that's been put behind renewable energy. I mean, we're seeing everybody, you know, going away from fossil fuels and into renewables. Presumably that makes this market a very exciting one to be in.
Yeah, it is exciting. I mean, when I look back at how it's changed over the past few years, you know, renewable investment used to be all about solving climate change and you know, environmental problems, and we used to have this thing called, you know, the energy trilemma. People used to refer to it, which essentially said you can choose either you can have clean generation, but it's going to cost you more, or you can have fossil fuel generation, which will be dirtier, but it's cheaper. And then you also have this question of security of supply. Now, the interesting thing over the past few years is that renewables are now scoring very well on all those three things. So they are now the cheapest way to generate electricity in most parts of the world. Of course, they don't produce CO2. And then also, when we consider the situation in Europe, in Ukraine, for instance, renewables are now being seen as improving security of supply. So although, of course, renewables, thinking about wind and solar, they are largely dependent on the weather. But over time, that is, you know, it's not as variable as it is in the short term. But every megawatt hour, for instance, of electricity that you generate from a wind farm in the North Sea is 1 megawatt hour less that the country as a whole needs to generate from a gas-fired power station using imported gas. So it's doing everything. It's solving or helping to solve the climate issue, and it's also helping to reduce power prices from the very high levels, which are really down to the high gas price. And it's also helping to improve the energy security of the nation over coming years as well. So yeah, very, very exciting time.
And fascinating ones too. James Smith, Fund Manager at Premier Miton Global Renewables Trust, PMGR. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.